And welcome to the Wellbeing and Career World podcast. I'm delighted to be chatting with a girl to say yes to everything and everyone. A typical Virgo perfectionist, I'll have to find out what that is later on, trying to spin away too many plates for most of her life until one day was too much and she cracked. She cracked so hard that she had suffered severe burnout, leading to a psychotic episode. Even in her darkest days, she wanted to help people never get to where she got to. Now a qualified NLP coach, she helps people feel how she feels now without going through what she had to go through. Today we'll be chatting about mental health awareness. A very warm welcome to the podcast, Sarah Tait. How are you this morning, Sarah?
Hi, yeah, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Wonderful. Where are you right now, Sarah, on planet Earth?
I am in Chelmsford in Essex in England.
Oh, very nice. And how is the weather today?
It's a little bit grey. It was cold this morning on my dog walk, very cold.
And what type of doggy do you have?
I have got a little apricot poodle who absolutely rules the roost in this house.
And how old is what's the poodle's name?
His name's Lenny and he's 2. And he kept us going all through lockdown. He was a pre-lockdown puppy that has spent most of his time in lockdown, and now we can't leave him.
All right. And is he eating the shoes? Has he
No, he's quite good with shoes. No, he's quite good with shoes. He is just very stubborn. So right. He does what he wants to do when he wants to do it. But he's good with shoes. He's good with wires, cables, things like that. So we don't have any chewing going on, which is good.
Oh, right. That's good. Well, I'm a big dog lover, I have to say. I like dogs more than most humans, but that's for a different podcast altogether. We'll chat about that some other day. So you mentioned there with regards to Virgo. I mean, I didn't ask you anything about this before. So what is a Virgo perfectionist? What am I missing out on? What's so special about Virgos?
So Virgo's my star sign, born in September. And I think for me, whenever I've read star signs, it's always been perfectionist, wanting things done a certain way, very organized, and I've always lived up to that. So I don't know much about astrology apart from the fact that it is apart from the star signs, and I read them sometimes about me, and I'm learning a little bit more how to work with the moon energies and things like that. But I definitely am not any sort of expert. It's very, very early on, but I do know that Virgos as a star sign are renowned for being perfectionist and organized, and I definitely lived up to that.
Right. So I'm a Sagittarius. Do you know what I am? Are we renowned as being lazy? No. Oh, okay.
I have no idea. Very early on in any sort of astrology journey, and whether I want to understand more about all of it. So yeah, definitely not my area of expertise.
I'll Google it later on. Yeah, so generally, Sarah, our main chat today. Yeah, it is. Oh, it's fascinating stuff, I have to say. I think maybe, I don't know, there was some there last year, I think it was, that my star sign has moved a few days and I'm now something else. But I don't know. Anyway, I'll Google it later on. So today we're chatting about mental health. So what is mental health in your opinion? Because we hear this word a lot being chatted either in the media, conversations around the restaurants or the pubs. What is it? Or in the workplace?
So I would define mental health as probably the most important thing that you can look after. I would describe it as looking after your mind, your emotions, and yourself. We talk a lot about physical health and if we've broken an arm and how we're going to get better and how we keep on top of our physical health. And we are definitely getting there with mental health. People are talking a lot more now about how they manage their mental health and what they do to keep their mental health well. I think there's still a lot to do in the space of mental health, and people being able to express and talk more about it, especially if they're not feeling okay or not feeling like their mental health is in a good place. But for me, mental health is looking after my mind, looking after my emotions, and looking after me as a whole.
Do you think, Sarah, then that, with mental health, because we know if somebody, say, has a sick stomach or they have a sick heart or a sick liver, we can treat it. But it's very difficult, isn't it, when somebody mentions the word mental health, because it's just so hard, is it, to diagnose? Is that what is that probably part of the issue? And especially because if an individual, for example, is having a so-called happy life, and they're they're feeling good all the time, and they probably can't relate to somebody that's suffering from mental health. Do you think that's a possibility in day-to-day life? I mean,
Yeah, definitely. And before I experienced any mental health problems or mental illness or poor mental health, I didn't really know how to relate to people that were struggling with their mental health because I had never experienced it. And I think sometimes we live in a society now where we feel like we've got to come up with all the answers. So if our friend is telling us that they're not feeling great, we feel as though we've got to try and fix it for them. That's not our job. Our
yeah,
job is sometimes just to listen and be there for people. And I think what makes it easier with physical health is you can say to someone, if they say, "Oh, I've got something's wrong with my foot," you can
yes,
say, "Oh, well, you need to go and see a doctor about that." And you can almost like shift the responsibility to the healthcare professional. Whereas if someone says, "I'm just not sure I feel great today," we feel like we've got to try and come up with a solution for them of, but we don't. We just sometimes just need to listen. And I think it's easier for me now, having had a mental illness, to be able to relate to how people are feeling and be able to spot signs in others. And I think the more we talk about it and the more we share our mental health journeys and what we've been through, hopefully the more we will educate people as a society to understand that, one, it's okay to not be okay, two, you can get through things, and three, that sometimes you just need to outlet and listen to others and talk and work through things without having the need to fix all the time.
yeah. I mean, that word fixing, do you think that's an issue sometimes? As you mentioned yourself, it's great to listen, but we're also very good at trying to fix people. But sometimes people don't want to be fixed. Is that generally
Yeah,
how it works out?
yeah. And I was definitely a fixer,
Right.
trying to fix everything and everyone and trying to help as much. And I thought I was helping, I really did. And I possibly was helping others when I was trying to fix,
Yeah.
but I wasn't helping myself because I was taking on everybody else's problems. And then all of a sudden, I was the one that then crashed. And I was the one that then wasn't really able to fix myself almost. So I do think fixing is a problem. And I think it is almost in the absence of us not knowing what to say or how to react to the way people are feeling. We feel like if we come up with a solution, we can almost move on from it,
Right.
move on from a difficult conversation.
You mentioned, Sarah, that you crashed. So how did you crash? I mean, were you experiencing like panic attacks? What was the initial start?
So I think a lot of my mental health problems started when I moved into, we bought, me and my husband, a fiance at the time, bought a flat. And I'd never really experienced the responsibility that came with that. My mum, bless her, did absolutely everything for me when I was younger and lived at home. And all of a sudden I had to then think about, how do I manage a home? And at the same time, I also took on a really big career step at work,
Right.
and was traveling a long way to get to work each day. And I just took too much on, but I didn't really recognize it at that point. So then we also were planning our wedding. So I threw myself into wedding planning. So I had a lot going on: new home, new job, planning a wedding. And that sort of went on for a few years of those things while we were working through that. And then after the wedding, we got married in Italy, which was absolutely beautiful. And it was
What
amazing.
what part of Italy did you go to?
We got married on the Cilento coast,
Oh,
which
very
is the
posh.
coastline underneath the Amalfi Coast. It's a lot more rural, than Amalfi. It's more, felt very Italian, and not many people spoke English, which I absolutely loved. It was really
Right.
hard to try and communicate, but I loved that it felt like it was authentic Italy.
Yes.
It was beautiful, absolutely amazing, and so amazing to the point where when it was over, I didn't really know what to do with myself.
Right.
My jobs had then changed again as well, throughout my career. I'd got used to running the home at that point, but still there was a lot that I was taking on. And then the wedding was over and I didn't really know what to do with myself. So what I then decided to do was throw myself into a really big project at work, which was not the best idea. So I then worked all the hours. I was working evenings, I was working weekends, I was working like religiously. I was working so hard. I didn't really have that much time for anything else. And then it came to Christmas and I had all of my holiday for that year for the wedding. So I didn't have any time off over Christmas and we were busy over Christmas trying to get ready for a launch of a product. And I then in January, everybody came back from their Christmas breaks and was all refreshed, all excited, raring to go for the new year. And I was really struggling with that. But at the same time, I then decided I was going to do the whole new year, new me and change everything and go on a crazy, silly diet, try and exercise loads, try and do all of these extra things as well as working really, really hard. And it was almost as if my brain just went, no, you physically cannot take any more on. And it was actually, I found out there was something that had gone a bit wrong on the project and I really, really struggled with my sleep for a few days and to the point where I was only really getting a couple of hours. And one Friday, the second Friday in January, I'll always remember it, second Friday in January, I just couldn't cope anymore. And I physically, at the end of that working day, physically collapsed into my husband's arms and felt my brain pop. It's the only way I can describe it. It's like a popping sensation. And that started a psychotic episode. So for 5 days from that point, I didn't sleep. So didn't sleep. I was too scared to sleep because I thought if I slept, I was going to die. Because I convinced myself that the pop in my brain was a brain tumor.
Right.
And I was just exhausted. I was so exhausted, and it was almost as if my brain went, we physically can't take anymore, and it like almost exploded because it was so full at the point where I could no longer do anything. And then during that psychotic episode, which lasted for, I'd probably say a couple of weeks, it was really intense at the beginning where I didn't sleep for 5 days. I was having multiple panic attacks throughout the day. I mean, up to like 20 or 30 a day. And I completely lost touch with reality. So I didn't know who I was. I couldn't make any choices for myself. I couldn't really leave the house because I would have a huge panic attack. I believed things that weren't true or weren't real. So I thought the TV was talking to me. I thought my flat was bugged. I thought that I was in a coma and that my mum and my husband, who were looking after me, were like my mental health and my physical health. And I had to live out all of these challenges to be able to pass the mission, which therefore meant I could wake up from the coma. So it was really scary. And I think what the scariest thing was is that I had never until that point had a panic attack, had any sort of paranoia where I thought my flat was bugged or anything like that. And it is almost as if it all just came to head at one point.
And what is a panic attack? I mean, how do you feel? I know you said your brain went pop and you didn't sleep, but is your heart beating fast? Are you sweating? What was your experience?
So I had multiple panic attacks and they were all slightly different depending on what was going on in my brain at that point. I remember a really bad one that I had where I had convinced myself that I was actually in labour, and I wasn't pregnant, but I had convinced myself that I was in labour and I couldn't breathe. So I remember my mum getting a paper bag and getting me to breathe into the bag. So it was like this wave of, it's quite hard to explain if you've not had one, but it was almost as if a wave of the strongest emotion possible comes over you and you don't really know how to process it. So the only way you can really process it is to almost outlet all of that emotion as quickly as you possibly can. And that, for me, transpired in different things at different times. So this particular really bad one, where I thought I was pregnant and thought I was in labour, transpired in my heart beating very, very quickly, not feeling like I couldn't breathe. So feeling like I wasn't able to catch my own breath. So feeling really, really short of breath. And that then in itself panics you even more. So then it's like this perpetual panic that just keeps going until you can actually find some sort of calm. And in that particular one, I managed to start breathing into a bag and catch my breath, and then my heart rate came down slightly and I was able to then come back down. But there would be different things that would trigger me. So there was another point where my husband made me a tea, and it was in a mug that was from work. So that then triggered the feeling that I was having about work. That then wave of really strong emotion came over me, and I remember being really, really hot, really, really sweating, heart beating really, really fast. And then again, you think, oh my God, what's wrong with me? What's happening? So it gets even worse. And I mean, he was able to calm me down, but it was happening, 20 to 30 times a day after never having experienced one before.
It must be very frightening. I mean, what do you do now? I mean, what can you do, or what can you suggest to kind of calm down these panic attacks? I mean, have you learned any techniques, or is there any process that you kind of go through? I know you mentioned breathing there, but is there anything that you would recommend to somebody?
So I'm really lucky in the fact that I fully recovered, and the fact that it's called a psychotic episode meant that it was an episode and I was able to fully recover from it. I had private medical insurance through my work and was able to get really good treatment through a private mental health hospital. So I went on tablets which calmed me right down. And then I went through a lot of intense therapy, both group therapy and individual therapy. And then I managed to come off my medication, I think 4 months after starting taking it. And then I got discharged from therapy 10 months after having the psychotic episode. And since then, I have not had a panic attack. I mean, I've not had a panic attack since that initial 2 weeks of what I would class as my psychotic episode. But I now know all my triggers for any mental health problems, so I know all my triggers. I know all of the things that could potentially trigger me back into any sort of psychosis, because I learned so much about myself through therapy, and I think that was really important. And I also just make sure I look after my mental health, and it's really small things that we think, we hear it all the time, it's always the same stuff, but the reason we hear it all of the time is because it works. So it's things like eating really well, it's things like exercising, and I don't exercise lots. I see some of my exercise as just going on a daily walk with my dog is really good exercise, and getting fresh air. And I do yoga as well. So I wouldn't say that you have to be smashing out in the gym 5 times a week. If that's what you want to do, great, but you don't have to. It can be as simple as a daily walk and some stretching, which is what I tend to come back to. And meditating, journaling, all of those things are really important. But for me, the biggest thing is my sleep. So I know that if my sleep is suffering, that for me is the warning sign. So I know that's when my brain is almost getting to the point where it's got too much going on, trying to process too much stuff, which means I need to start paying attention. So that is a really big warning sign for me. I think the things with keeping your mental health in check is all around, all of the small things that we do every single day that we know are really good for us can help towards our mental health. If we stopped just doing all of them, we know that that doesn't help us. And that's when it starts to decline. And that for me is what was happening. So before my psychotic episode, I had I was not looking after myself at all. I wasn't sleeping well. I was doing yo-yo dieting, going from during the week having diet shakes and then at the weekend eating takeaways and all the chocolate. So my eating habits and relationship with food were awful.
Right.
I wasn't exercising at all. I shut out anything that I loved doing. So I just wasn't seeing the people that I loved spending time with as much as I would normally. I wasn't doing anything hobby wise outside of work. And then I was really stressing over everything. So my thoughts just weren't healthy at all. The first thing I would do in the morning would be to check my emails and my social media. And the last thing I would do at night would be to check my emails, work emails included, and social media. And then I wondered why I was struggling, because everything I was consuming that was going into my mind, it was full all the time. I was not giving myself any time to like drain all of that from my mind. It was just constant feed of information, of stress, comparison, work emails, looking at people on social media. It was all of this stuff that was just feeding my mind with constant negativity, the news. And it was almost like it was like a bit of an addiction, almost like an internal self-harm almost. And it's like, even if anything negative or anything stressful I could find, I would look at it and I would take it all in. And I know it would make me feel worse, but I couldn't stop.
Right.
And then I would obsess and stress over it. And I think all of those things that I was doing before, I am now able to recognize that if I start to do any of those things, I know that that's a slippery slope.
Yes.
So I'm able to identify that from all of the work I've done, basically. And what I've now got is almost like what I call my internal resilience toolkit. So it's like internally, I know the things I need to be doing to keep my resilience up, which means I'm able to bounce back from things that crop up, because life isn't perfect, right? There's always going to be bumps in the road. Who knew that we were going to be in a global pandemic? Nobody could have predicted that.
Yeah.
So it's not about the fact that you'll always be able to be happy all the time and positive all the time. It's about how you ride those waves of when things do come up. How do you deal with them? So how do you make sure that you're resilient enough to be able to deal with any knocks that come along? And for me, my resilience comes from all of those things. So it comes from sleep, it comes from having a much healthier relationship with food, where I've ditched the diets for good and I eat healthy and I know the things that nourish my body, but I also enjoy the things that I enjoy. So if I want to have a bit of cake, I'll eat it and I'll really enjoy it. And then
what's your favorite cake, Sarah?
Oh, red velvet. Red velvet will be my favorite cake. Yeah, with the cream and cheese frosting.
We gotta like that. We do.
Making me hungry now. But yeah, it's all the small things every day, and I make sure now that I'm quite busy. I have a full-time job that I do. I have a business that I've set up on the side. My husband has a business. We've got a dog. We've got a house to run. We've got all of these things. So it's not as if I have loads of time to fit all this stuff in. It's the little habits that you do throughout the day for me that build that resilience up. So it's the 5 minutes I get where I'm on the sofa and I'm drinking a hot tea and I just make sure I don't do anything but that. And I find a mindful moment in that moment to just think and just let my thoughts process, so I can then move on and do other stuff. And just trying to find joy in the moments as well. And I make sure that I get up early and do some meditation and do some journaling, because I know that helps me. I have had times where I snooze and lay in for as long as I possibly can. And then I wake up and I'm like, don't quite feel as great today. Right. So I wonder what that is. And then I'm like, the days I wake up and I do some meditation and some journaling and go on a really nice dog walk and things like that, I feel so much better. So why would I not do them?
So it's like a constant habit you have. I want to ask Sarah then, just go back a little bit, that you mentioned there you were working kind of 24/7. You were like a workaholic. You had a project, and did your work colleagues notice anything different with you? Like maybe different stresses, maybe under pressure a lot, maybe they noticed something a little bit off that maybe wasn't typical Sarah, so to speak. And then did your family notice anything? I mean, is that one of the biggest problems as well, where the family might see something, but they might, she'd be grand. She'd be grand next week. And the company might see something, she's grand, but she's being productive because she's doing her job. She's doing a great thing. She's doing the work of 5 people, so let her at it. Like, you know what I mean? So everybody ignores Sarah. She's doing a great job. Like, that's it. Like, so I mean, how did that work out? I mean, were they kind of shocked when this all began to blossom or come out?
Yes, definitely. So I have always been the strong friend, the one that gets through anything, the one that works really hard, the one that's organized, the one that's on top of things. I've always been that person. So I think it came as a real shock for people when it happened. So we just think back previous to, as I was sort of really struggling just before I had the psychosis, I think people probably noticed a difference. And I definitely now, reflecting and looking back, can see that there was things that were said to me and things that were like, are you sure you're okay? And I remember crying quite a lot at work, which I don't tend to normally do. And people saying things don't quite seem right. But I ignored it all. It's almost somebody could have been flashing a sign in front of my face saying, you are going to have a psychotic episode, and me going, no, shut up, that's not going to happen to me, and pushing it to one side and going, that will never happen to me. I was that person that was like, I will never have time off work. I will never have a mental illness. It won't happen to me. You hear it happens to everyone else. It will never happen to me. And therefore, I think everyone thought, it'll never happen to her. She's fine. She'll be able to get through this. So even though people were saying things to me, and even if they come all bells and whistles screaming in my face telling me this is going to happen to you, I'd be like, no, don't believe you. So I think there's an element of people can spot things in you, but also you've got to try and spot it in yourself, because if you don't believe what they're saying to you, you're just going to carry on doing what you're doing anyway.
Yes.
So it's almost as if I was like, no, that's not going to happen. So I think now in hindsight, and I've had conversation with friends and family since, there was a lot of warning signs that I think I completely ignored. And I think other people probably saw, but thought she'll be okay, and she seems to be ignoring it herself. And I think that's possibly a problem in today's society, that we think it will never happen to the strong friend, and we think it will never happen to the person that always seems as though they've got it together. And it's probably worth just checking in on those people. And even if they say they're okay, dig deeper and ask the second question if you've got a hunch or an intuition about that you think maybe they're not.
Yeah. I mean, is there it's an interesting thing there, because you mentioned previously as well with regards to your email and social media, that you would check it out, and then before you went to bed or in the evening you would check it out again. Has that changed at all? Especially because we hear a lot of negativity, and for me personally, I'm not on it, but I find it interesting when you see, I'm not going to say celebrities or individuals in particular, and they're upset because something's been said about them on a certain social media platform. But my attitude is, well, just get off it. Don't just press. You have the right to. You signed up to this. You have the right to get off it and just get on with your life. Just fresh air outside. I know it's easier said than done. I'm just talking here, but this is my kind of way of saying how did you now look at that? So is your whole thought process change with regards to when you look at something on social media or email, or do you take it to heart as much? I mean, if it's a negative column, do you go, oh, look, that's, there's always a positive to a negative.
Yeah, absolutely. I've totally changed my whole relationship with my phone and social media. So I completely deleted all of my email work apps off my personal phone. So now I only answer my work emails in work time. Cool. So when I finish at 6 o'clock and my laptop lid goes down, that is it. People know you cannot get hold of me unless it's absolutely urgent. And there's only a couple of people that have my personal number, but I will not be checking anything. So firstly, that definitely. Secondly, social media. I had such a love-hate relationship with social media. I think it is amazing for so many things. It is such an enabler. It is so good for businesses. It's great to connect with people, but it also has such a negative side to it. So you have to try and keep yourself, you have to have better social media boundaries. I think that's the only way you can do it. It's there, it's out there, it's sort of the world we live in now, social media, and props to you to not being on it, because I think it's really hard to not be on it now with the way that the world is sort of changing and growing businesses and things like that. So the way I manage my own social media boundaries is I don't have any notifications that come up on my phone.
Yeah.
So I physically have to go into all of my apps. That includes my WhatsApps, because I'm a member of lots of WhatsApp groups. And if that was constantly pinging on my phone every day, I would be so distracted. So
Yeah.
I only ever go into WhatsApp or into Instagram or into any other social media app when I have got the time to do it. So I'll sit down, sometimes with a tea, sometimes just with Lenny on my lap, or sometimes I'll just flick onto it, but I'll be much more mindful about doing it. And then the other thing I make sure I do, so that really, really helps, having boundaries around the notifications, because otherwise I would look at it and go, oh, they want something, and just get back to them straight away. And then I'm completely taken away from whatever I'm doing.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think really helps is on social media is we have control over what we consume on it. So if something makes you feel like crap, unfollow that person. If you don't want to unfollow that person, just mute them on your feed, because it might be a family member, right? And you don't want to unfollow them, just mute them so you don't see it. And you can then start following. And there are so many people on Instagram that are so like inspirational now.
Yeah.
You follow more people like that, and then you can curate your feed to how you actually want to feel. So you have more control over it than you realize. I know that there's advertising, and I know people are picking up data and sending you things, but you have the right to be able to delete that, or say that the ad is inappropriate, or unfollow people, and you can change your feeds. I remember waking up one morning and thinking, oh God, I feel really, really good today. I'm going to go to the gym. And I went to the gym and I did a workout, and I came back and I thought, I'm going to have a little look on social media, and I'm going to have a look at some people and see if I can build myself my own workout plan. So I was Googling a few different people, and obviously a lot of the people I'm looking at are personal trainers and fitness models at this point, because I'm trying to find some sort of like program about what I want to do in the gym. And then I remember really clearly walking into my bathroom and then looking at myself in the mirror, and a voice going, oh my God, look at the state of you. And that was literally as a result of about an hour on social media, probably not even that long, probably more half an hour on social media, looking at fitness models and fitness plans. Right. Now, I can recognize that now because of the work that I've done, and because I know. And I was like, whoa, okay, let's not do that again, because that clearly came up because you felt great this morning. That came up as a result of looking on Instagram, looking at a load of fitness models, seeing how beautiful their bodies are, and then judging your own body against that. Yes. That's not okay. So now, and I literally went back straight away and unfollowed those people, because I was like, that's how that's made me feel. Now I can recognize that, but some of our like teenagers and children can't, and it does upset me a little bit to think that that's the sort of society that we're growing up in, that you start comparing yourself to people on social media. So, I mean, I feel like we could probably do a whole podcast on social media. So maybe we should get there on social media before I rant even more on it.
No, it's fine. It's the reason I came up, and I'm on LinkedIn, but the reason I came off it was because I became quite new to it quite late on. And I remember I was getting these requests from people I had met, and I went to school with, and I hadn't seen them for maybe 15 or 18 years, maybe longer. And they send you a request. And I go, oh, that's such and such. And I'll send them a little message. Hey, how are you doing? No reply. And then I go, okay, this is weird. And then I might see them probably out in the town probably a few weeks later. And I was like, did they send me that request, or did I? And I thought all these social medias like have a bit of a laugh and connect with people and a bit of banter. But it just seemed to be was more about, how would you say it? It's about what people had. I got a new car today. Me and the family went
Yeah.
on holiday. I just went, oh, I can't be having any of that, because my personality is generally, I'm quite open, probably like yourself, Sarah, in a way where I chat a lot and I talk a lot. I want to have a bit of a laugh, or as the Irish used to say, a bit of crack. And we
Yeah.
used to kind of, a bit of a giggle and stuff like that. And I just couldn't. I said, well, why do you request me on Facebook, or why do you request me on this when they're not going to interact with me? And I went, oh, forget this. I'm out of here as quick as possible. So
Yeah.
LinkedIn was the only one, because I'm just there as a face and a name,
Yeah.
and that's it. I don't have to interact with anybody if I don't want to. But enough about me. I'm boring you anyway. Getting back to the fitness models, the only type of model I would be probably a hand model. So because I think I have a body and a face for podcasting. It's not really, it's not really, especially without the video. So I think hand modeling is probably the best I'd probably go for. Anyway, enough of my stupidity. So tell me this, Sarah, if you were to go back in time and speak to yourself, or your younger self. So we're having like an Avengers Infinity War or Endgame at the moment, where they go back in time to save the planet. What would you do? What would you say to yourself, anything different?
Do you know what? I actually don't think I'd do anything different. I think I would say to myself, it's okay. Life will probably be full of roller coasters, and there will be ups and there will be downs. Learn how to ride them rather than expect that it's going to be plain sailing. And that everything you go through in life, you grow through it. And no matter what, you will always be exactly where you're meant to be. So it might sound really strange that I say that, having been through what I've been through. But if I hadn't have been through that, I wouldn't be the person I am today. So I actually wouldn't change it. As horrible as it was to experience psychosis, and I know that it was probably really hard, and probably more harder for my mum and my husband to see me like that, and for my friends and my family to know that that was happening. But personally, I actually wouldn't change it, because I genuinely think that the experiences that we go through shape who we become. And I think what I would probably say to my younger self is, there will be bumps in the road, and that's okay. Like, you don't have to, and not everything has to be perfect. Not everything has to be plain sailing. Learn how to ride the waves. I saw a great quote the other day that said, the waves will always be there, just learn how to surf them.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. I think even by you coming on this podcast, I mean, it's a lot of bravery, because there is a lot of individuals struggling through life, not just at the moment, but through life in general. And I think for yourself to come on here and chat about it and discuss it it gives other people hope, and it gives them inspiration as well. So well done to you. So let's talk about something positive now. I'm not saying everything that you've gone through is all negative, because you said yourself, it's like the waves, it's made you stronger. But you're now a NLP practitioner. So what is this? We hear all these fancy names and fancy abbreviations. Just tell us the words. What does NLP mean? Tell us.
NLP means neuro-linguistic programming. So
okay, what is
let
that
me
all
break
about?
it down. So neuro is the way that we absorb information through our five senses. So what we see, what we hear, what we smell, what we taste, and what's the other one? What we feel. So what we touch physically. So it's the way we process information through those senses and take it internally. So that's the neuro bit. Linguistic is the language that we use. So it's the language we use with others, the language that we use internally to ourselves. And then programming is the strategies and behaviors that we run internally. So the way we deal with things, the habits, we've got the behaviors, we've got the traits, and why we do them. So what neuro-linguistic programming does, or NLP for short, and you probably now know why we shorten it. Yep. So NLP for short is break down the reasons behind why someone does something to either prevent them from doing it or change something about a behavior. So there's lots of reasons. There's lots of things you can use it for. You can cure phobias with it. So I've cured phobias and worked out the root of why someone's got a phobia of something. And you can then do what's called an NLP technique. And that particular one is called phobia cure, quite simple. And the techniques that we use are a variety of different techniques, but they're essentially getting parts of different emotions and anchoring them to other parts of what you've been through or what you're going to go through and things like that. So it's really clever the way it's done. I feel like I fell into NLP, or it was almost as if NLP was delivered as a present to me from the universe, that this is the next thing you need to do. When I fully recovered from my psychosis and when I finished my therapy, we'd just gone into lockdown actually, because that was then the next year. And I then decided I really wanted to help people. And I think because people had seen what I had been through, they had then started asking for bits of advice. And I could only ever go off my own experience and the therapy that I had. And I found that alone was really good to give people advice, and was able to give tips on like self-care and how to look after yourself more and boundaries and things like that. But I wanted to do something a little bit more structured, and I wanted to get some sort of training and qualification to say, this is actually how I can properly help you now. And that has now transpired into a coaching business, coaching and a speaking business. So speaking about the journey that I've been through, and then coaching others on the things that they do, why they do them, breaking them down. So essentially they can have whatever they want from life. It's almost as if you set an outcome of what you want, and then you look at every single roadblock that you've got on the way and work out how do you overcome that. You can work on things like limiting beliefs that you've got, and a lot of the things and the why we do things the way we do them, the root of them have come from probably between 0 to 7 years old, which is when we are building our maps of the world, like how we interpret the world. So therefore, later on in life, when we get a certain piece of information, we put it through our what we call perpetual filters, which are we delete information to then make it fit our map of the world. We distort information to make it fit our map of the world, and we generalize information to make it easier for us to absorb, to allow it to fit our map of the world. So that's why the same person can get 2 bits of information and consume it and interpret it completely differently, even though it's exactly the same piece of information, based on what they believe to be true about themselves and the world.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I now find people so interesting. And I think before I would have been like, I just don't understand why that person has done that, or why they did this, or why they did that. And now I go, I wonder what happened to them when they were younger for them to react that way, or do this behavior, or do that. But the great thing about NLP as well is it can be done quite quickly. So it can be quite easy to find a like memory or reason why you do something, because we use hypnosis as well. So we use a lot of work with the subconscious mind. So a lot of the things that you can't necessarily consciously recall, but it's all in there and it comes out, and it can be done a lot quicker than talking therapy sometimes.
So if someone wants to get in touch with you now, I know unfortunately, I kind of slated social media there a few minutes ago, but if they need to get in touch with you for any of the services that you provide, how can a listener get in touch with you?
So it is through social media at the moment. I'm still working on my website. So social media, I am at I am Sarah Tait, and then I'm on Facebook at I am Sarah Tait, which comes up Sarah Tait, coach and speaker.
And will the website be done the next coming months, or?
Yeah, probably over the next couple of months, which will be sarahtait.co.uk.
Brilliant. So before we go, so what would you say to someone who is finding it difficult at this time? So we'll forget about the pandemic, we'll forget about, coronavirus or anything like that, or what would you say to somebody at this moment who needs a bit of help, maybe struggling mentally? What can they do?
So firstly, I would say there is always light, even in the darkest of days, always. Even if it's a tiny, tiny crack of light in the door, there's always light. in the darkest of days. I would then say practically talk to somebody, talk to a friend, talk to a family member, talk to a trusted person, talk to a therapist, talk to a coach, talk to a charity. Just talk, get it out of your mind. And we always say a problem shared is a problem halved, right?
Yeah.
So just get it out. By talking, it will just help so much. I would also then say check in on all of the things we've been talking about on the podcast. So things like, how is your sleep? Could you build some sort of better routines around your sleep? Could you have less screen time before bed? Could you set up some sort of evening ritual that means that your body knows that it's sleep time? I've just bought myself blue light blocking glasses, which help with deeper sleep and makes me wake up feeling even more refreshed. So things like that around your sleep definitely for me is a big thing. How's your diet and relationship with food? What are you putting into your body? And therefore, what are you then using that energy to then be able to do? The more good stuff you'll put in, the more good energy you'll get out. And what are you doing? Have you stopped doing all the things you love? And how can you bring some things back into your life that you love? Even if it's really, really tiny things like watching your favorite TV program or drinking your favorite drink or eating your favorite food. Bring back in those things that you love. And I also absolutely swear by gratitude. I know that people sometimes struggle to find things they're grateful for if they're feeling crap, but there is always something to be grateful for, even if it is the fact that the sun rose that day, or even if it is the fact that you've got hot water or electricity. There's always something. So try and start to find the small amounts of gratitude that you can in your day. What that will do is allow your mind to start focusing on more positives. And then you'll start to find that will just naturally build and grow.
That's great advice and great suggestions. And it's very inspirational, as I mentioned before, that you're speaking about this. I mean, I'll be honest with you, Sarah, I'm most grateful to have my hair. I'm 45 and I wake up in the morning and go, well done, Dave. We haven't lost any more just yet, but they're going grey, Sarah, which is not too good. But I just want to say thanks so much to Sarah Tait, NLP practitioner. We know all about that now, for joining me on the Wellbeing and Career World podcast. I will place in all of Sarah's links to her social media. And when the website is up and running, we'll put the link in for the website as well. So thanks so much, Sarah, for chatting with me today on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.